Hello again, and welcome to the new season of the Near Futurist podcast. My name is Guy Clapperton. So here's the deal. I've sourced an interesting guest, but before I hand him over to you, here's a quick plug for my media training service at Clapperton Media Training. I've got to make a living after all. Do you or your clients want to sound as confident, clear, and fluent in media interviews as the people in this podcast? Of course you do. My team and I can help. Drop my assistant Lindsay, that's lindsay@clapperton.co.uk, a note, and she'll set us a time for an initial chat. Or go to the website at clapperton.co.uk, two P's, to find out more. Now, back to the podcast. And that's enough of that. Now, in the first part of this interview, we covered The Apprentice and established my guest couldn't really talk about it while it was on the air. We covered public relations and AI, and will continue to do that, and how my guest is involved. You might know him from the current series of The Apprentice. His name is Lawrence Rosenberg. Lawrence, welcome again.
Thank you so much for having me, Guy. I enjoyed the first chat. I'm looking forward even more to the second.
Thanks. Obviously, it's been a week since then, so, lots has happened. We don't just record two on the trot, and dearie me, no. You use a lot of technology in your business, very obviously, and you've got a background in tech, but I understand it's largely banned on The Apprentice. No smartphones, nothing like that. So how does that square with any real-world business you've experienced? In the first episode, which we can talk about, Lord Sugar gave out maps, and he was horrified that nobody was using them.
It's an interesting one because within the whole sphere of The Apprentice, you are kind of working in a completely different way that you would ever work normally, as you sort of picked up on. If you are trying to find something, the first thing you do, you type the item in and then you'd go on Google Maps once you've located the item. It doesn't quite work like that. So even with something as simple as a logo, let's say, a logo would be sent to the design agency. You would talk through if we're talking for a really top company, which is what you're trying to create on The Apprentice, and you would wait and they would send you back the first draft, and then you would send them back your edits, and then the whole process might take anywhere from a week to 2 months. I remember the first logo that I worked on with a design agency took around a month, and you've probably got about an hour and a half to create the logo. You're limited in lots of different ways of the colors you can choose, the fonts, and all the rest of it. So you are working in a different kind of way. And I think the thing that's really important about it is it's almost detracting from, okay, what kind of business would this ever really be like? But actually, how do you handle things under stress? How do you react to things under pressure? Because how you react actually probably says as much to Lord Sugar about your viability as a business partner as it does how good is the logo. So obviously the creative aspect is hugely important regardless of what you're doing, and you do have to be creative. You do know the question, you've got to know the questions that you're going to ask and the best way to ask them to get as much information as possible. But I think the element and the essence of the show is, how do you deal with stress? How do you deal with pressure? And my antidote to that was just to enjoy myself. I said this in an interview. I said, for me, I just went into the show with the mindset of, I love my job, but it's very computer email focused. I'm sat at my computer all day, and I get the opportunity to go out and do some incredible things. But the day to day is sort of sitting at my computer, and I'm out doing these unbelievable tasks, and just to take the opportunity with both hands, just to enjoy myself, just to talk to Lord Sugar the way I would talk to you, Guy. And that's kind of the point, is if you're having fun and you're communicating in the way you would normally communicate, you're calm, you get your point across, and you're able to deliver something which you can stand behind. So yes, it is a slightly different business process. And yes, you don't have the tools and you're not able to do things like you usually would, but it's how you manage that shows the viability of you as an individual and as a candidate to Lord Sugar.
I get the fun element of it, but does a process like The Apprentice really help in business in general?
It's a great question, and actually I'm going to defer to an answer that the winner of season 17, Marnie Swindle, she spoke about this. I have to say that The Apprentice taught me what you can do in a day. The amount of things you can achieve in a day are absolutely astronomically larger than what you would ever expect. You do a day of work, but you are waking up at 3 o'clock and you are creating something, and then you've designed the logo, and then you've created a tagline and a story and a and a video and these things that would take months. You can just do things. And I think this is the value of being in that kind of intense process is it doesn't leave you. And I loved my job before, but I was very comfortable. I could do my 9 to 5, I do the extra shift here or there, when clients demanded it and when, I need to work weekends and bits and pieces to keep on top of things. But for the most part, I was good at what I did. I was very comfortable with my day job. And if I needed to, I could probably do it in less time than what the day took. But, that's not the kind of person I am. But, it was eminently possible. But the thing that The Apprentice gave me was this energy and passion to just do as much as I could in a day. And it's really kicked me on at the part of my life where I was like, right, actually, I should be growing. I should be making mistakes. I should be just achieving as much as I could possibly achieve whilst I've got this opportunity in front of me. And, I've really, since the show, since I left the process, and I can't talk about whether I won, whether I lost, where I leave or whether I don't, or all the rest of it. But for me, it just gave me this new kind of energy of what can be achieved. So, yes, it is almost like the things that you learn in there. Is it really applicable? Maybe not so much, but the interpersonal relationships and the communication skills that are required to be under that kind of pressure, it has taught me how to communicate under pressure in a completely different way to ever before. And that's the kind of information I can now share and impart and bring into my day job. And, also helps to calm me because I know there was lots of times I was under even more pressure than the really high pressure moments with clients. So there's lots you can take away. It might not necessarily be I'm now a logo designer because I've designed a logo, but there's lots within it that you can take away and you can really add to you as a person.
A lot of what you're doing in the new business, Rosenberg.media, actually focuses around the future of communications, or however you wish to describe it. A lot of that is going to be about AI because everyone's talking about AI. I'm wondering how, at one point, does AI assisted become AI generated, and does that do damage trust, do you think?
Hugely. I think 100%. And I think the thing that's really important with AI is even in my business plan, if I'm pitching AI as the future, it has to have some AI in it because obviously, if I'm not using it, then what's the point of this technology? So, I really wanted to incorporate that as an essence of what I was trying to put across. But actually, when we talk about I think it's even more than just AI, it's this production line of media trained professionals who don't really say anything anymore. So, the example I love using is the football interview because every footballer down to, the lowest levels of semi-pro football, no one listens to their interviews anymore because they've all been media trained. Even like step 3, step 4 footballers, they've all been media trained on how not to answer a question. And I just think that as there's more AI generated work out there, it will sound the same. AI is not able to generate anything new or original. It is just repeating what it's absorbed and what it sees out there and the things that it's learned from. So it won't create anything new. It is not creative. And I think that the what Rosenberg Media is, it's about really talking again. It's about authenticity. It's about saying things in a way that connects with humans because AI is brilliant. It has changed so many aspects of our lives. But the communication aspect of it, I can take one look at AI work and I can see that it's AI and it's got all the telltales. Even if you tell it to take the telltales out, the telltales are still in there and it sounds like AI. And I think it will stay that way for a very long time. So I think, especially with speech and how we're speaking to people and how we're communicating, I think there's this new age of authenticity which is coming in. And people really want humans. They want to hear people make mistakes. They want to hear people relate in the way that they would relate to their friends, the way they relate to content, the way they relate to what they see online. And I think that that's the essence of what Rosenberg.media is about. And I think for me, it's just got to be about authenticity when there is so much repeated slop out there. It's got to be about actual humans and how we communicate in a way that creates impact.
What's the fastest way AI can get a brand into trouble if it's poorly governed?
it's by producing something which is clearly AI. And I think there's two sides to something that's clearly AI. AI hallucinates. It still quite often will make mistakes. It is not all knowing. It can just say things which are completely wrong. And I think brands can make mistakes by A, producing something which quite clearly is AI. I can, like I say, I can spot AI very quickly. People who work with words all day, they can spot AI in a second. So, if you're sending stuff to journalists, which is just AI slop, you're probably going to get yourself blacklisted as a company. And if you're working with the wrong kind of people that are sending AI slop on your behalf, which I do hear from around the industry, it's going to give you a bad name. So that's one side. The second side is just AI related mistakes. If you're lazy and you are not checking AI and making sure that what it's producing is correct, you will end up with mistakes. And when brands make mistakes, that's when they get themselves into trouble. It might be something minor. They might be just off in a percentage on, something which is very minor and it might never get picked up on. But you could make a mistake which could be catastrophic for your business, and you end up spending far more on crisis comms than you would have saved in time by just actually doing the work yourself. So I think there's lots of ways you can run into trouble, but I think the two which I see the most of is just producing slop, and I think just getting things wrong, to be quite honest with you.
Isn't there also a danger of false positives? I was on Reddit the other day, and there was a PR person there who said he'd had a note from a journalist saying, "We're not going to use your pitch because it's clearly generated by AI. We've fed it into an AI detector." Now, the guy was quite annoyed because he'd written it himself. It just happened that the AI detector identified it as whatever piece of software this was, had identified it as AI when it wasn't. So, can we be a bit oversensitive? Shouldn't we be listening past or reading past the style and not looking for stylistic markers as just whether it's worth saying?
I think journalists are humans at the end of the day. I think the example I always give to people, if you have two choices of who you're going to go out with on a Saturday evening, are you going to go out with the guy that's unreliable and doesn't show up on time and never gets his round in? It might be a bit of fun, but and that for me is kind of, just AI slop. It can produce good things and it
I
might
thought you
be.
were going to say that was the media trainer, but there we are.
No, no, but then there's the human side of things. Now, if that person who was upset about it had the relationship with the journalist, well, whilst the pitch may not have been that good, they might have written it in a way or said something that would have appealed to that journalist, or they could have picked up the phone to them. But it sounds very much like from that example, there's the other side of the pub of he's always reliable, he always shows up on time, always gets his round in. And I think that's the thing that's really important. I think that relationships are going to remain very important. And if you have a relationship with someone, from the example you've given me, it sounds like there's no relationship. They've sent a blind pitch and the journalist has picked it up and said, you used AI. Now, if I had a relationship with the journalist, they would know that I wouldn't be using AI and they would give me the benefit of the doubt if they thought it might be. But I think, yeah, listen, with everything, there's the danger of false positives. There's a danger of false positives with AI where, well, and maybe not necessarily a false positive, but certainly, as I was mentioning, hallucinations where it says something that's just wrong. And in the same way, journalists can make a mistake and get something wrong. But if they're working with AI all day, I think that's probably a sign that you need to upgrade your writing maybe to a slightly more human style if you are getting picked up as sounding like AI. And there's things, I used to love using EM dashes and I've been using them for absolutely years. But I've had to get rid of them because EM dashes are now a telltale AI sign. Another way that I like writing, I like, using really bold, almost like it sounds like I'm speaking in my writing, but some of that can sound like AI now. So, the let me be clear or I'll keep it simple because that's become an AI telltale. So you have to be able to watch what it's saying and, the things which are becoming commonly understood as AI. And if you are actually immersing yourself in what could get you in trouble, even if you're not using it, you can make sure, like, as in AI, you can make sure that you're not using those things within your writing that might make you sound like AI. So there's lots within it. And listen, things will go wrong and people will make mistakes, but it's a new technology. It's only been around for what, since, November 22. So, we're still only in what, like year three and a half of this being a common consumer technology. It's developing all the time. So mistakes will be made.
Fair comment. There's also, I think, something about declaration and being honest about it. In the same Reddit group as the guy who was complaining about being falsely identified as AI, there was another participant saying, I'm using AI to tidy this up because English is not my first language and I don't want to mislead you and get the grammar wrong. Then he started. Nobody minded in the slightest because he'd actually said what he was doing and he'd said why.
Absolutely. I mean, Grammarly is AI. I use Grammarly with my work. It picks up lots of mistakes that I make. I'm not perfect. I'm a good writer, but I'm not perfect. I will make mistakes. There will be bits of my writing which, I need to clean up. And quite often, clients might send me words of things that they've written. And actually, I don't need to reinvent the wheel. I just need to make sure that I've cleaned things up. And having AI tools like that doesn't mean I need to just use ChatGPT. There is a lot more to AI than ChatGPT and, just producing content straight from ChatGPT. I think, from my side of it, Grammarly is a perfect example of something which it is AI, it incorporates lots of AI elements into it, makes lots of intelligent suggestions, but, it's something that helps me to improve my work. And, I think there is the chance to be honest, and I think that's very important. If you're producing something completely from AI, I'm working with some clients in the Middle East, and if I needed to translate something, I could have a swing with it, be like, I've taken a first pass at translating this with AI. Please, could you make sure that this is correct and sounds sort of directly translated, and we've done things in the right way. So I think, honesty and transparency with AI is incredibly important. And I think that as we're moving forward with the technology, we've just got to be careful that when we are using it for the human jobs, like writing, like emails, if that kind of thing is being incorporated, there's an AI tool called Fixer AI, and I tried it for a week to write my emails, and I was like, just didn't like it. It
Mm.
didn't. I like my emails to be me, and I have my own distinct way of talking to people, which is very sort of friendly and trying to build interpersonal relationships, and I think that's how the industry should work. But for me, I think that it is got to be something that works alongside people, and when it's being used regularly, honesty is pretty important.
And it keeps taking the dad jokes out in my case, and that'll never do. How does this work across generations? I mean, well, you mentioned that you're 28 years old. I'm over twice your age, and I'm using AI, but I'm certainly not a digital native. Is this something that's easier for younger people, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's something that people are growing up with. It's not natural to anyone just yet. It's the same way with social media, really. I mean, you're now looking at a generation of people who have grown up with social media. They are tech natives. That's the way we describe people who grew up with computers and, they're digital natives. They grew up with the internet. They grew up with social media. They know how to make content. They know how to create these creative videos that go viral and all those other things that, maybe people from an older generation, there are things that were more native to them that the generation before them weren't native to. But AI is this thing that's just come in and it's not really native to anyone. Now, obviously, within technology, it is a technology, and maybe the older generation is maybe not as digitally native as the younger generation. But I think that understanding AI skills is going to be incredibly important, especially with there are so many issues within our society, and I'm passionate about injustice and putting things right. And there's a problem with ageism and getting people back into the workforce, and how many people are out of work in this country, and does work pay? And I think AI should be something that helps people, not something that replaces people. And I think there is a tremendous opportunity for the AI companies to actually work with, the government's just put something out now that they're going to have this AI skills training, and, helping people to get this training to, supercharge their work, get them back into work, and, really bring the next generation along with them. And I, I do fear that it's almost looked at as a technology which is impossible to understand. It is a skill. It is a skill. AI is a skill, and you've got to learn how to use it, how to ask it questions in the right way, how to challenge it, how to pick up hallucinations, how to notice AI telltale signs, everything about it. It's a skill, but it's a skill that anyone can start learning from today, tomorrow, and it will keep developing. So if people and the next generation and the older generation start learning today, AI in 2 years' time is going to look very different to AI now, the same way that AI now looks very different to the way it did 2 years ago. And as it continues to grow, if the next or the older generation are given that support to keep in the loop and actually grow with it, there is no reason why this needs to be an exclusionary technology. It should be something that supercharges people, that gives them the opportunity to get back into work, that gives them the opportunity to do their jobs better. And if the AI companies can really see that opportunity to be seen as something that is going to help people and is going to be of benefit to society as a whole by making people's lives and jobs better, then that perception around AI is going to take our jobs. I think you can start to eradicate that, but that's a whole com story, maybe for another day and another podcast, Guy.
And I think also there's something that's not changed over the years. It predates AI, but it gets back to what you're saying about giving it the right prompts and asking it the right things. The old garbage in, garbage out thing is,
Mm.
we've been saying that since the 80s, and it remains true. In terms of your own use of technology, what sort of tools do you recommend public relations practitioners use, and how do you deploy them yourself?
I use Grammarly religiously. It is an absolutely phenomenal tool. I use it within my emails, and that is certainly something that incorporates many of the aspects of AI. I do use sort of the standard sort of ChatGPT, all of those. I think as a tool, if you understand how to use it, for deep research tasks, it can be very helpful as a starting base. I think people will always need to be careful with content they're producing. If you don't know how to use AI and you don't know how it fits within the content you're producing, I think you run a risk of just becoming something that the client can do themselves. Well, if you're writing a press release that the client could produce with ChatGPT, then what value are you providing to the client? So I think people need to be incredibly careful with that. Gamma AI is a phenomenal tool. It's absolutely brilliant. It's a presentation maker that can learn how you like to present. It can learn your brand kit. It can learn your colors and everything that you do and produce these beautiful presentations that you would need to, pay a presentation designer, a pretty penny to produce and would take them, a good amount of time. Um, I think there's just new tools coming all the time as well. And I think there's the application of AI to all the things that we were already using. So, I use Roxhill as my media database, and that now has AI elements incorporated into it, Meltwater for media monitoring. When I search one of my clients and, where they've been featured, it now gives me a cute little summary about the sentiment and what's being said and the overall sort of summary of what's going on around the search terms. So I think AI is being incorporated into everything. We need to continue to be careful about how we're using it. But I think at the same time as well, I think as it develops, I think it's going to be incorporated into quite a lot of things. And if it's making people's lives better and quicker, great. If it's taking away the human touch, not so much. So I think it's important that we keep looking out for sort of new tools and new ways to make our jobs better that can focus on, the important part of the job, which is delivery and human to human and, interpersonal relationships. But for now, I think, some of the tools that are out there that are absolutely brilliant for sort of supercharging the work that we do.
I think that's a really good place to leave it, Lawrence. Let's finish off by repeating from the last episode how people can get in touch with you if you want to hear more.
Absolutely, and I'll try and not plug the name too many times. So if people want to get in touch with me, it is Rosenberg.media. So that's the suffix .media, like a .com or .co.uk. My email is Lawrence@Rosenberg.media. We've got everything up on the website that we do, the way we do things, and the importance of authenticity for the new era of communications. So if you want to find out more, everything is there, and I'd love to hear from you.
Lawrence Rosenberg, thank you once again.
Thank you so much, guys. It's been a real pleasure.
And if you'd like to hear more like this, please do subscribe to the Near Futurist podcast on any of the platforms available, and do come back next week when I'll be talking to someone else entirely. Thanks very much. See you then.